Welcome to yet another episode of the Ugandan Podcast. I am Rita Kanya Mujuni. Definitely a new face for you, but it's still a conversation here that is worth having. I am Rita. Once again, I had told you that. Now our guest today is Lilly Ajarova, and the conversation is why visit Uganda? Well, Lilly is the Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Tourism Board. You're most welcome to the Ugandan Podcast, Lilly.
Thank you very much, Rita.
Now we'll get straight into it, starting with why visit Uganda. Now currently Uganda in 2022 was launched as what we would call a destination, and in particular under the theme of uniquely ours, uniquely yours. Now when we have a look at that, what does this mean to the motherland?
Thank you very much, Rita. Destination Uganda is a beautiful destination. We have had the Pearl of Africa as our destination brand for a long time, but not clearly defined to everyone who is in tourism business or even to the different people who actually visit Uganda. So we took on the journey to refresh our destination brand. So January this year, we got His Excellency, the President of Uganda, to launch Explore Uganda as our new destination brand. Why Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa? Explore because we have the depth, the range, and the variety of Africa in this destination. Explore because we don't have just one thing that you can just visit and go away from this country. There's so much to discover. There's so much to experience. There's so much for you to immerse yourself in. And that's why we're saying, if you have to know what Uganda has to offer from the tourism perspective, then you have to explore it. And it is the offer that we are giving to everyone. And this is also for Ugandans. It has to start with us, the Ugandans first. So many Ugandans do not know their countries. So we are encouraging everyone through this brand to explore their own country, Uganda. It's the Pearl of Africa. Uganda represents what the continent has, from the landscape, the diverse culture, the precious, rare species like the mountain gorillas, where we have 54% of the remaining population of the mountain gorillas in the world in Uganda. We have 50% of the bird species that this continent has, and that's a representation of 11% of what the world has. We just have so much. The source of the longest river in the world is River Nile, and the source is in Uganda. We have the third highest point on this continent, on Rwenzori Mountain, where the equator crosses, and there is permanent snow on it. So the largest freshwater body on the continent, Lake Victoria. I mean, we have it all. We have it all. If we go into the wildlife species, there are those that are endemic to Uganda. So you can't actually see them anywhere else in the world until you come to Uganda. So there's all this diversity, variety that we need to get to know as Ugandans, but also we are offering this to everyone else outside Uganda. But it's important that we start with ourselves, because if we do not appreciate what we actually have, then it becomes difficult for us to brag about it, to get the rest of the world to know about it, because we don't know what we have. So right now, we are running the campaign Uniquely Ours for the Ugandans to embrace what this country has, to embrace the beauty that we have and all the resources, natural to the culture, but also the things that we have created. Yeah, we have very many unique things around that we can brag about. And for that, we want Ugandans to get to know this, understand it, appreciate it, enjoy it, but also then be able to make the best use of it. Most important is two things: to enjoy it, but also to make money out of it.
Okay. So before we get into the foreign, since we're focusing on you and I, the Ugandan out there, you mentioned how the strategy going forward, but let's take it threefold: where we stand, where we're coming from. When you mentioned you refreshed it to something that you could package and have each Ugandan have an ability to go out and enjoy what Uganda has to offer, but also after this, what's the plan? Where do we stand as a country? So let's go back to before 2022. How was it looking like for a Ugandan who wanted to visit and explore Uganda? Did we have many Ugandans? How so far has the campaign gone? And where do we plan on taking it?
Thank you. We have come a long way, especially with domestic tourism. Before 2022, we had very low number of domestic tourists. It was more because Ugandans were not aware of what we had. Because from Uganda Tourism Board, we actually ran some surveys from 2019 to find out why aren't Ugandans traveling. Three things we found out. One was they were not aware. Even for those who could afford to travel every weekend, did not know that we had all this variety and the beauty. And even in terms of infrastructure, they were not aware that actually we had beautiful lodges across the country. Two, there was a concern about accessibility. And this is because there was a perception tourism is all about going to the national parks. So there was always the complaint or the concern that it's difficult. How? I have a little Corona car. How do I actually make it cheap for myself or affordable to reach Bwindi, or Massishon Falls or Kidepo is so far away, my car can't make it, I need a 4-wheel drive. So accessibility was cited as one of the key factors that was stopping the Ugandans from traveling. And then 3 was the cost. Again, it was a question of perception because the Ugandans were thinking, well, you have to pay in US dollars, gorilla permits is $700, but that is for internationals. Ugandans pay 250,000 Ugandan shillings. They're actually charging shillings. Entrance to the national parks is 20,000 for Ugandans. Meanwhile, the internationals are charged up to $40. So there was an issue, like I said, awareness and then perception. And there we started running a campaign called Take on the Pearl. And we got interrupted, of course, with COVID. And once we went through after the first lockdown, we started this campaign, Take on the Pearl. And because people had been locked inside for a long time as well, we could see that people now wanted to travel. Because they couldn't travel out of the country, it was an opportunity for them now to explore their own country. And ever since, from 2020 to the point where we launched the new brand Explore Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, we're seeing the numbers just growing. Okay. The numbers are growing, whereby the numbers of Ugandans visiting the national parks have surpassed the international tourist numbers.
I think as Ugandans, this is say well done. And also to you as a board, definitely shows something is working. But as we talk about Ugandans, just to take you back to something you had mentioned, you talked about the rates when it comes to charging for them to be able to access some of these parks. It still continues to be a conversation. A Ugandan will say, but why do I even have to pay these 250,000 Uganda shillings? I'm already putting in the transportation, getting there, there's staying there, the lodging and all that. And then they start to say, but even that 250, as a Ugandan, surely they should just allow me just to go see these things. They're in the same country as we are and return. What would you say to a Ugandan out there that continues to have an issue when it comes to the recharged?
Well, what is very important is for us to appreciate why is this fees being charged? Because there's a cost to maintaining the national parks. We have the rangers who on day-to-day basis, 24 hours non-stop, patrolling the borders of the national parks, inside the parks, to make sure that the animals are protected. There's all the cost that goes with doing that, from their salaries to the equipment they have to use and everything else. So it's really to be able to have Uganda Wildlife Authority that manages the national parks have the resources to maintain this. So it is a good gesture that we do this as Ugandans, because it is our resource, yes, fine, but we need to be able to maintain them.
Yeah, so that we can be able to have our generations come in and also be able to see this later on, but also have the tourists come in and see
Absolutely.
it. Well, let's get to know you for a bit, Lilly. We've talked about different parts of the country. You mentioned the western part of Uganda that has Mount Rwenzori. You've mentioned also what's happening in Jinja, the source of the Nile. We've mentioned the parks. Your top 5 picks when it comes to tourist destinations within the country. We'll start with your number 5. And why?
Ooh, number 5.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would
rank them. Okay,
Can I just mention the 5?
Give us 5.
Right. Yes, but number 1 is Rwenzori.
Okay.
I've had the privilege to travel different parts of the world. To this point, I know that Uganda is the most beautiful country in the world, but one of the most beautiful spots in this country is on Rwenzori Mountain.
Have you
When
climbed?
I went, yes,
Okay.
in 2020, I actually made it up to the highest peak, that is Margarita Peak.
Okay.
And it just felt like being on top of the world. Yeah, seeing the sun rise from below me, it was like, okay, I'm actually really on top of everything. And the trek up as well, the experience of the plants, the animals were completely different from what you would see. They are smaller animals, the plants are smaller, but different, beautiful, different colors from what you would see in any of the forest parks or savanna parks or any of the normal plants that you would see. Because of the higher altitude, so the kind of plants are completely different. So Rwenzori would be my number 1. My second spot would actually be Kibale National Park. Kibale National Park, why? Because of the forest. There's something about the forest. It's an intact forest. There are very old trees in there. There's a feeling that it gives me that it's one of the oldest places that we have in this country. And it makes me feel like there's everything that is closed inside that forest. But of course, knowing also that there are chimpanzees there, and chimpanzees are the closest relatives we have. We share 98.7% DNA, and chimpanzees have been one of the animals that I've worked with the most in my life. So knowing them to the level that I know, and my first experience as well, I believe, is that's with chimpanzees is what makes Chivale very unique for me and special for me, because it's the first point where I fell in love with the chimpanzees. It was a turning point for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Third would be Kidepo. Kidepo National Park. Every time I've been to Kidepo, it feels like being in another country. It feels like it's different from the rest of Uganda. It's flat, it's a savanna park. It's flat. You can see so far away in a distance. And then we have the Nurus Valley, very sandy. And just walking on the sand, in the valley, in the middle of nowhere. And the animals there as well, like in terms of the numbers, like you see the buffaloes there in herds of hundreds of them. So it feels more wild than, it's like the true wilderness that we have in this country.
4.
The fourth one, that's why I was having a problem with ranking. So
it's not in ranking. Let's take it as not in ranking.
Not in ranking, because Ngamba Island would be almost the same as Rwenzori, but not there. I would put them the same because it's an island in the middle of Lake Victoria. The boat trip, whether from Munyonyo or from any point, on the shores, the shortest access is through Entebbe. So a boat trip from Entebbe, where you're crossing the equator on Lake Victoria before you get to Ngamba Island, is an experience of its own. And then you get to Ngamba Island, you feel like you're cut off from the rest of Uganda. You feel you're so far away after the 40 minutes boat ride, and yet you're actually not so far away. And being in an environment where most of the area, the island, is actually a forest with chimpanzees, and there's just 5% of the land is where they have the tourist camp and the staff camp. It feels very special. It feels almost like you're in the world of the chimpanzees.
I can only imagine the sound that they make throughout the day, and also just simply how scenic it is. For a minute, if you have a lot on your mind, there's just this peace that comes over you.
Absolutely. And they also have viewing platforms. And one of my favorite things on Ngamba Island is watching the sunrise from those platforms.
I think you like watching the sunrise. And number 1?
And next one.
Or your 5th. Number 1, the 5th, depending on where you're choosing to rank her from, but there's no rank to this.
No, there is no ranking. It's just one of the top 5. Yeah, we are talking about... the source of the Nile is a special place as well for me. Yes, right now we have had the water level gone up and kind of covered up, where we would actually get off the boat, stand in the water and actually see where the Lake Victoria is and where the Nile starts from. I've always thought that was very special. Unfortunately for now, the water level has gone so high. And yes, there's work in progress to get the infrastructure there improved. But for me, the source of the Nile is another very special place.
Okay, well, you've been able to mention your top 5. And for someone who's watching, who's listening, do you even have your one pick? Have you taken time to look at how beautiful Uganda is? When you mentioned the scenic beat, the sunrise, has really emphasized her love for the sunrise. Perhaps it could be something you could also fall in love with.
And sunset as well.
Yeah, it's just something about watching the sun come up and watching it go down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it goes down with a few of your troubles as well. But well, I cut you short earlier when I did ask you about where we stood as a country, but you didn't tell us going forward what you'd like to see from this campaign.
Our goal is to get all Ugandans to get to know about Uganda and the beauty that Uganda has to offer, but also get all of them to experience it. Not know it from reading, watching on TV through this podcast, but actually to encourage them to visit as many of the places around this country and experience it for themselves. Because if you really don't know, if you don't experience it, it's different. But once you do, talking from the experience is more powerful. Yeah, and we will get to fall in love with our country, which is really one of the things we all want. Yeah, that we should love our country. How are we going to love our country when we actually don't know it? Yeah, talking from the experience that I've been in every corner of Uganda and comparing this with what other countries have, Uganda is the best country in the world. And it feels very wrong for me to see our young people leaving Uganda and seeking, to go and work elsewhere. Yeah, when we have all these resources. But it's also because they don't know. They're ignorant about what we have. They're ignorant about how they can make use of this. And I believe that's our responsibility, as leaders in this country, but also as Uganda Tourism Board, to try and bring to light, information about what we have and how we can get the Ugandans involved. We are looking at getting Ugandans more involved, not only from the point of view of visiting, but also investing, because there's a lot of business opportunity in the tourism sector. Yeah. And this ranges from the product development. We have very limited accommodation facility in this country. Very limited.
Let's talk about that. When we talk about investment, away from brand, you have mentioned all these amazing things about Uganda when it comes to tourism. If you have done it all, but you have a few shillings to save that you can invest, you talk about accommodation being one of the areas that they can get into. Let's talk about investment. Areas they can invest in, the costs averagely, because for most people, they look at all these beautiful places they can go to, but it goes back to, can I be able to actually put something like this up? Because the cost is also something scary for many.
Well, it shouldn't be, because we all have different capacity, but also in terms of the market segment, we have different segments. There are those who want it basic, whereby you can just offer a nice compound, and clean, good, sanitary, facility, and a basic shed where somebody can actually have their picnic lunch or whatever, and I can carry my own tent and come and just pitch it there and pay my 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever, depending also where this location is. So it can be as basic as setting up a picnic site, setting up a campsite where you don't need a lot of investment, because there's a market segment that are looking for that kind of experience. It could be because of budget, but it could also be because that is the kind of experience somebody wants. They want to rough it up. It can be actually somebody who can afford it, but once in a while they want to rough it up, so they would rather go camp than go and sleep in a 5-star lodge. Yeah, and then of course there are those who would want relatively comfortable, nice facility, and there are those who would want the high end, luxury. So there's a whole range that you can play. We can all work with, depending on the capacity that we all have, and this also speaks to the need of Ugandans. Yeah, because one of the challenges we have had, especially with the destinations in the national parks, originally we started with most of the facilities being high-end. And that made it very difficult for Ugandans to travel where I'm going to pay $150,
per night.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense for them to visit. But Uganda Wildlife Authority has worked around this to be able to provide for Ugandans or anybody else who is low budget, so they can actually have the campsite, so they can have low budget. They have built those, those bandas, and you can sleep in the national park at 30,000 per night, which is quite affordable. And of course, you could also say 30,000 per night can be, could be very expensive for somebody. But I always say, traveling is also a lifestyle, because if you choose every evening, you're going to drink 5 beers before you go to bed, you could actually save that money and still travel with it. So it's the choice of what kind of lifestyle you really want.
Put away those 5 beers just for a bit. Save them. That money, save it for one night. I know for me, those 5 beers, my Friday. But like you say, it's a lifestyle at the end of the day. Yeah. So now, with that option of investment, there's also the option of trade within the tourism sector within the country. Let's also talk about that.
Well, the tourism sector is one sector that has a wide range of value chain. If we look at the value chain, let's start from the airline. Yeah, we have Uganda Airlines. Yeah, so the airline, the airports, the taxi guy at the airport who has to transport, the traveler to the hotel, yeah. And this person is traveling to the source of the Nile. They will stop somewhere, to maybe buy, a fruit or a snack somewhere along the way.
Can talk about Namawojolo.
Exactly. Yeah, and we would want to encourage that, especially for international travelers. It's important for them to experience our own food, our culture. So if they buy a snack from there, somebody from there is benefiting. They get to the source of the Nile, they're paying, for a boat ride, they're buying the crafts. We have our ladies there selling crafts. Somebody's, benefiting from that sale, and everywhere they go. And then in the hotels, especially in the hotels, where are the foods coming from, the person growing tomatoes, rearing chicken,
gets to the market, that eventually from that market gets to the
hotel.
So
the value chain is so long, the multiplier effect is really huge. So it's one sector that if we managed very well as a country would lead us to the economic transformation we are looking at getting to.
Well, you talk about the airline, we've talked about the domestic part of it, we've talked about the trade, the investment, but also the foreigners coming in. How is our foreign tourism doing?
Our foreign tourism was doing very well. We're on a very positive trajectory before the COVID pandemic disrupted everything. I'm very excited to see what happened during this summer. That was from July, August, and now as we speak in September, which is our peak season in tourism normally, up to early October. It has been amazing. It feels like we are back to 2019, status. I've seen so many, tourist vans, across the country. I've moved around to ask how the hotels are doing. Some of them are at 80% occupancy. From zero and the average of 15%, at the beginning of, last year, averagely we're operating at 15%. Now to move up to 80% this year, that is huge, jump, which gives a lot of hope that we are recovering from the impact of COVID. However, there is definitely still a lot that needs to be done to improve things and get it better and have the our private sector, who are the service providers here, do better, because the impact of COVID got some of them to shut down completely, especially the small ones. They shut down completely. Some of them have never recovered, have just decided to move to some other sector. So it's still going to take a while to fully recover from that. But those who were able to maintain their facilities, their services until now, we can now see that things are improving. I personally believe that it will only get better. It will only get better, and as we also lobby the governments, for improvement of the infrastructure further, because we have some of the roads to some of the key tourist sites like Bwindi. Is still not very good. Here in the Ministry of ICT, we need better connectivity, especially, it's not only for internationals, even for Ugandans. If I'm going to travel, and just consider as somebody coming from America or from Europe, and these days it's instant. I could make it, but my family, friends are back home. I want to show them what I'm experiencing, and Kidepo, no network. I was on Renzori for 9 days with no network. So I could only start sharing once I came down. So there's need to improve the infrastructure, the airstrips. Those are some of the infrastructure that we need to improve as government to make it better. Provide better experience for everyone, and the marketing as well. We still need to do better. Uganda is not well known. We are not on people's faces out there in Europe or in America. Once in a while when I travel and I say I'm from Uganda, somebody is saying, where is Uganda? And it's like, seriously, you don't know about Uganda? It's like the most beautiful country in the world. Why don't you know about it? Yes, we need to do our part. We need to market better to be able to position this country for tourism. We are still not doing enough. So definitely.
When we talk about marketing, we sort of skipped it, but when it comes to investment, these booking agencies, they do help with the marketing. What are the areas that you see, one, that we could have more of these booking agencies? Where can they actually also be able to help the board? Because there are many of those that actually help put Uganda on the map in different countries based on whichever marketing structures they want to use.
Well, definitely our effort without the private sector involvement would be very limited. So we have more private sector players that gives the support in promoting the country. We have the private sector tour operators, the hotel owners, the travel agencies are actually spending their own money to go market the country in international expos. They also use their assets, like the digital assets, whatever content they're putting out about Uganda, the packages, is all about selling the country, promoting the country. So we all have to do it together. I've always said marketing the country is not just a sole responsibility for Uganda Tourism Board. It has to be every single Ugandan, talking about it. Why can't we use our digital platform, the social media, to talk about this beauty other than just politics and other things that are more depressing? Why do we want to depress ourselves when we have all this beauty around us? So, yes, the private sector is playing their part, but we all together need to do more than we are doing to this point.
Okay. Once again, getting to know you, you have mentioned all these beautiful spots you've been to in Uganda. Is there one place you haven't been to? Just one? Or would you say each part of Uganda you have been to, you have seen it, you love it, or there's one that you'd want to go to, you haven't yet made time for, but it's on your list?
Well, this country has so much. For the known places, the known things, I've been to all of them, but I believe there are still many more that I haven't been to, but I don't know them.
Or there's a Ugandan yet to show you that there's this place that you haven't been to. Well, dear Ugandan, this is your time. Time to shine and show Lily something, or maybe even Rita. You don't know how many places I've been to. I won't tell you how many I have or I haven't been to. And just lastly, as we wind this up, to a young Ugandan that's out there, maybe wants to see the world, has dreams of seeing every other part of the world, but Uganda hasn't been top of the list. Why Uganda for them? And also just your parting shots.
Why Uganda? We have the diversity, the variety, depending on whatever your interest is. This country has something to offer for you. So if you want to be adventurous and go do bungee jumping, whitewater rafting, we have it. If you want to go on the boats, sail on Lake Victoria, on the Nile, you can go tubing on the Nile, we have it.
The adrenaline junkies.
Exactly. And if you want to experience the diversity of the culture we have, the foods, we have it. So I believe it's about each and every one of us getting to understand that this country offers the diversity that of what each of us, might want. And my advice would be for the younger people to take time to know their country, to encourage them to visit different places. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't, yeah. One of my favorite places as well is Botanical Gardens in Entebbe. You want peace. You just pack your Rolex and a bottle of water, your
mat or your mat, whatever
exactly.
You're going to sit on.
Go sit in, in the botanical gardens, hear the birds singing, walk around the varieties of trees and, peaceful environment. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be. Because that's the other perception that we have as Ugandans. To travel, you have to have a car. It has to be expensive.
It has to be out of Kampala, out of the first 3 districts out of the country.
We can start with the backyard, what we have in our backyard, and as our capacity grows economically to be able to afford, then we can get out there. My biggest advice to the young people is the attitude. We need to have a positive attitude if we are going to grow. Yeah. More especially for tourism. Yeah. We are naturally hospitable people, but if you're going to do it right in tourism, there has to be professionalism to it. It can't just be, any kind of smile. You need to present yourself professionally. So, yes, let's keep a positive attitude because this country has a lot to offer to ourselves, but also to the world. My other advice to the young people is patience. Yeah, for us to, for you and all of us to achieve what we want in life, it requires patience. Because these days the young people want it instant. Really, it's tough to just want things to happen just like that. A bit of patience will get you to where you want to go, will get you to achieve your dream in life. And I would want to encourage more of the young people as well to be involved in tourism. Yeah, get to know more, because we have a lot of people out there who do not have work to do. Graduates, we know the unemployment challenge we have, but I believe that tourism offers a solution to unemployment. Whatever little that you have in your backyard, you can turn it into an asset that tourists can visit, whether domestic or international. And I would like to encourage the young people to learn. Don't limit yourself just in the area where you are. Yes, you could have studied business administration or whatever it is, but try and expand your knowledge, across the various sectors. It's important, and I welcome you to learn more about tourism because it's a lot of opportunity. Yes. Now, as I conclude, on this, just to educate our viewers as well, that tourism, there are two types of tourism. There is the leisure tourism, which has been more what we have been inclined to talking about, but there's also business tourism, where we talk about, meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. The recent happening, Nyege falls under business tourism, which is an event. So business tourism is one kind of tourism that we still need to position ourselves as a country for.
Where do we stand right now when it comes to the business tourism?
Well, we were not doing very well until 2018, when the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities actually intentionally decided that we need to do something, and we did a strategy on how we really need to move forward. So from 2018, 2019, pre-COVID, we put in a lot of efforts to try and bid for international meetings and conferences to happen here in Uganda. So from where we had no records in 2018 with that effort, we were ranked as the 10th best destination for MICE. MICE stands for Meetings, Incentives, Conferences and Events. We were the 10th best in Africa. And then 2019, we moved up to being the 6th best destination in Africa. And that is because of the numbers of international conferences and meetings that we hosted. Of course, we got disrupted. And right now, we are really pushing very hard from that front as well, that we get to host many international events, many conferences, and many meetings. There is even more opportunity there. So in tourism, of course, most young people are looking at being guides, owning a tour company, travel agents, but you can also train and get certified as a professional conference organizer. Yeah, so there are different service providers in the business tourism angle as well. So lots of opportunity. And also, just to say that I really enjoy what my country has to offer when it comes to food. My favorite foods, if I may.
How many are we looking at? Because you didn't even say foods. Okay, you're 3.
My best luombo of mushroom in peanut sauce.
Akatiko. Okay.
That's it. Yes, I love kalo. And I love the acholi dish of the malakwang with sweet potatoes. Those are my favorite. Okay. So if anybody hasn't tasted those,
that's what they should also be able to have some of. If you were to also talk about juice, because we know as Ugandans, we are really, as a country, we have really been gifted when it comes to our motherland, when it comes to soil. What's your favorite juice as well?
Pineapple.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Lilly, for taking your time out to be a part of the Ugandan podcast. What are the social media handles that people could be able to look out for when it comes to the board? Because I believe some of the information we've talked about here is also on your social media platforms.
Well, our major social media platform is Explore Uganda. You'll find us. We have TikTok accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then that is more for the information, the marketing information. We have it on Explore Uganda. But if you, on the corporate information, on how you
Business
want
tourism.
to, business tourism, how you want to get involved in tourism, we are also, as Uganda Tourism Board, are mandated to license every tourism operator in this country.
Please say that slowly, because there's a Ugandan who has listened, and I don't think you got to this part because they're like, this is a business opportunity, pause and moves on. Yeah, just say that once again.
So for you to be operating legally a tourism enterprise in this country, you need to be registered, inspected, and licensed by Uganda Tourism Board. So for your business, for you to get that guidance, whether you're going to set up an accommodation facility, whether you're setting up a tour company, a travel agency, whether you're trying to set up that cultural site in your village to become one of the destinations for people to visit, you will require to come to Uganda Tourism Board, or just go to the website of Uganda Tourism Board, and you will be able to get all that information. All the corporate information are there, with the email addresses and telephone. All the times we are on standby to provide the necessary support.
All right. Thank you, Lilly. As you have heard, if you are a tourist, if you're interested in just simply enjoying what Uganda has to offer, Explore Uganda, other social media platforms. If you're particularly invested when it comes to the business angle of things, you have listened and watched the podcast and you're like, wait, I could be a business owner in Uganda from simply what nature has to have offer around us. That's also an option. Well, you can also be able to continue to share this with someone else who you think might be interested in the tourism within the country. The social media platforms are on the screen. Ugandan Podcast has been Why You Visit Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Lilly, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.